the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
Welcome into Fantasy Football Night in America, right here exclusively on the Better Sports Network. This is the FFPC High Stakes Fantasy Football Show presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm your host, Eric Balkman. Follow me on the X at Eric Balkman. You know, I'm going to stop telling people to follow me on the X because I just don't tweet enough or I don't X enough, whatever it is. So you know what? Follow me if you want, but don't expect anything earth-shattering there except for me occasionally bragging about my kids, which, by the way, my son just finished his 10-year-old son, back-to-back flag football champions, got an interception in the championship game against a previously undefeated team. Shout out to him. So I will brag about my kids every so often. I am also the host of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Roto-Viz High Stakes Lowdown, and, of course, the janitor of the FFPC here, coming to you live at 7 o'clock tonight. I want to welcome back my co-host tonight. He is all things content creation. If you want anything done on BrotoFantasy.com or on the Broto Fantasy app, it goes through Psych Ward FF on the X. Welcome back, Matt Ward. How are you, man?
Oh, excellent. What an introduction. Thank you so much for having me. I've been chomping at the bit waiting to get back on this thing. I had such a good time with you last time, so I'm excited to pick up where we left off.
Remind me, are you in Canada or are you from Canada?
Yep, both.
Both. Okay, perfect. All right.
You nailed it. Yeah. Different coast this time, but still up north. Yep.
Okay, got it. All right. So the pride of Canada also joining us on the Better Sports Network tonight. We have a fantastic show planned for you. We're going to get you up to speed on all the injuries, all the goings on as you get set to submit your starting lineups for your season-long leagues, as well as we'll get into the BetterCast Thursday Night Football preview. If you're not playing on the BetterCast with all these primetime games, what are you doing? You gotta be playing. It's so much fun. I'll be playing tonight, as well as participating on Sunday and Monday, which you can do too. Download that BetterCast app in the App Store and Google Play. It's free, and you can win a lot of cool, authentic signed NFL merchandise. We'll get into that coming up at the bottom of this hour. To kick off hour number 2, we're going to find out where Matt Ward stands on certain players, including but not limited to James Cook, Romeo Doubs, and KJ Osborne. And then in the final segment, we'll go through some starter sits, including, again, not limited to Kyle Pitts, Jerome Ford, Michael Thomas, and much more. That is coming up at the bottom of the second hour. Hey, if you want to play weekly in the FFPC, you can do that, actually. Go to myffpc.com, myffpc.com, to play in the FFPC Weekly Challenge. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. Just choose the 10 players that you want to roll with. If you want to play without kickers and defenses, or you can play with 12 players with kickers and defenses and just get them in by 1 o'clock on Sunday. And then you can watch your team experience the roller coaster, the ups and downs, the thrills, the spills, everything going on. Yes, throughout week 6. I remember only 1 player per NFL team, no stacking. That's what makes it so fun and so maddening. You can enter for as little as $35 and win up to $2,500. Shout out to the man behind the glass tonight. He is Anthony Rivera, producing this show and making this go. I want to get to the week 6 prep, but let's kick things off with somebody hanging out, watching us on Facebook right now. It is Marcos Valdez. He is in a half-point PPR league, Matt Ward. He has to sit 1, and my God, this is a really good problem to have.
An embarrassment of riches.
An embarrassment of riches. DJ Moore, Puka Nacua, and A.J. Brown. He can only play 2. Which one of those guys gets sat this week? And just for so everybody's aware, A.J. Brown is on the road against the Jets. Puka Nacua is at home against the Cardinals. DJ Moore is at home against the Vikings. Matt Ward, which one would you sit?
I mean, it's really, really tough. And it's tougher, obviously, having him prove himself with Cooper Kupp back. But the tear that A.J. Brown is on right now and the tear that DJ Moore is on right now, like, I'm much more comfortable. You know, it's a start your studs kind of philosophy. I'm much more comfortable eating that variance on Puka having a potentially another big game than I am actually like sitting AJ Brown and watching him do what he does with 8 catches for 127 and DJ Moore having 100% of the Bears receiving yards for wide receivers last week. Like it's very, very difficult, even in perceivably, I guess, tougher matchups, although Moore having one of the better matchups of the week. Definitely, I just can't sit AJ Brown. I'm going to have to sit Puka, but this is a great problem to have. Like, you can't go wrong with your decision here.
You ask me about this tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday, I might have 3 different answers.
Yeah,
As it stands right now, I'm with you. I can't sit AJ Brown, so I'm going to roll with him. I'm actually going to play Nakua, and this is like maybe to my own detriment, but I have Nakua in so many leagues, and he's been so good to me so far. And the biggest concern I've had this whole time is what's going to happen when Cooper Kupp comes back. Well, we saw what happened last week. Again, that was a really good matchup to bear in mind for the Rams, and both Kupp and Nakua were very, very effective. I think that continues. My concern with DJ Moore is he had such a blow up last week that it's kind of clouding my mind of how big he was. And he could, quite frankly, go off against Minnesota. It's a great, like you said, it's a great matchup. The running back room is depleted. Everything should be funneled to DJ Moore again. So tough to make this call. I'm going to lean towards sitting Moore over Nakua. It's obviously close. And like I said, you asked me this on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour or anything like that tomorrow, I might say sit Nakua. I might say I'm not going to sit AJ Brown, but I could go back and forth on Nakua and DJ
it's
Moore.
So
Let's keep the start sits rolling here. Let's Dummy Man Pluto hanging out on the Twitch watching us tonight. Should I drop Hunter Henry for Rashee Rice? I have George Kittle, wide receivers Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Thielen, Michael Thomas, and Tank Dell. That is what Dummy Man Pluto has tonight. Now, I'll say this. I don't know if there's a good reason to keep Hunter Henry on your roster and I don't know how deep the league goes. I don't know if there's a good reason if you're playing with like a shallow bench league, 5, 6, 7, whatever. I don't know if there's a good reason to keep Hunter Henry on the roster. But Rashee Rice, I don't know if he does anything for you as well. In fact, I'd be more inclined, just in case something happens with Kittle, you can plug in Hunter Henry. And granted, I know the New England offense is a dumpster fire, Matt. But at this point, I don't know when you would play Rashee Rice with the wide receiver core like that.
Yeah, I kind of completely agree. And looking at the Kansas City Chiefs targets and opportunity shares from last week is kind of quite damning for that wide receiver room in general. And I understand it's still at the beginning of Rashee Rice's career, and he could absolutely progress into a bigger role. But you're talking about Travis Kelce only playing 39% of the snaps after dealing with that high ankle sprain, and no wide receiver getting over 60%.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a spread offense in both the sense of the actual terminology of their scheme and the way that they're going to move that ball around if Kelce isn't in the lineup. I kind of agree with you. I think Rashee Rice is definitely, he's the newer Kadarius Toney, and kind of similar skill sets too. And Toney is still earning, that 6-7 targets, as no other members of the Chiefs had more than 5 last week. So it's tough for me with Rashee Rice. Again, kind of playing into that philosophy with you as well. I don't know what the utility to hold on to Hunter Henry is in a shallower roster, right? Holding on to 2 tight ends, but there actually might be more utility, as you said, just having him as that backup rather than rotating that position with the Rashee Rices of the world.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing you could do is if something happens to Kittle and you go to the waiver wire, somebody gobbles up Hunter Henry, and you're looking at Tyler Conklin or Jawan Johnson or something like that,
right,
which quite frankly may not be that big of a downgrade from Hunter Henry. But you know what I would be doing if you're itching to cut Hunter Henry? Get one of these injury away type guys at running back. Pick one of those guys up and see what happens there. I'd be much more likely to spend an end of the bench roster spot on something like that. That's the best advice we can give you, Dummy Man Pluto. YouTube chat, Stephen Joe. What up? Unfortunately, I have to play, I'm assuming, Javonte Williams or Jaleel McLaughlin tonight. Which one should I start? Half-point PPR, does the half-point change anything for it? I mean, like, I went over this right before the show started, Matt. I had Javonte Williams on pretty much all my benches. I did switch it, and I am starting him in one league, but I don't feel real great about it. I mean, this is a massive negative game script for Denver, or for Javonte Williams tonight. We'll get into this coming up in the next segment. But for me, like, I would much rather play a guy like Jaleel McLaughlin right now, even in half-point PPR, over Javonte Williams. I don't – and think about the Samaje Perine factor in this too. It could just gum up the works. But McLaughlin's been the big play guy. McLaughlin's been the guy that's on the come up right now. So I would play McLaughlin over Javonte Williams. And I can't believe I'm saying that. Like, you would have asked me this month and a half ago, I never would have thought I'm saying it. But things move pretty fast in fantasy football, and that's why I'm saying McLaughlin over Williams.
Yeah, and coming in on a short week too with that hip injury, just getting limited practices in. Obviously, didn't play last week. I still think McLaughlin's the hot hand in this backfield, and Sean Payton is certainly going to ride that hot hand as he does with his running backs. Samaji's opportunity share isn't going away, so you're kind of just looking at a committee of dysfunction in a really bad matchup. I think McLaughlin's probably and he has been all season. Very limited touches and already 4 touchdowns. So.
Matt, this next question is good for you from Brad McCoy 24 on Twitch. You pay attention to a lot of the usage stuff. You dump out a lot of the usage stats over at protofantasy.com, which you should be subscribing to and downloading the app, by the way. 1800 for Jerick McKinnon to score the first touchdown tonight. I don't know if you break it down as far as like when these guys are used, like in red zone or any like inside the 5 or anything like that. To me, McKinnon plus 1800, it's fun to plunk down 10, 20 bucks on or whatever. But I mean, I don't expect something like that to hit.
No, and I don't either. And I actually, it will come up, but I think that the Chiefs do happen to score first, but I'm not entirely convinced that it goes to Jerick McKinnon. And especially speaking of that opportunity share data, Isaiah Pacheco is being utilized a lot in the red zone and a lot in the passing game, specifically in comparison to what McKinnon usually does for this team. And against Broncos defense, yes, every single one of those running backs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire included, because we saw them all put up 4 touchdowns just 2 weeks ago combined. Like everyone in that Chiefs backfield has the opportunity to score, but it's nothing really more than a fun dart throw. It could definitely pay big. That I'll concede that, but yeah, it's not something that I would bank on.
Yeah, definitely not. But I mean, if you're throwing a lot of props out there tonight, it might be a fun one to have. Just to see what happens. Yeah. Let's go to JAC or JAC. I don't know. I'm sorry. On YouTube, hanging out. Trade question. They have Sam Laporta as their main tight end right now. They have the opportunity, and we'll get into Laporta and this calf injury in a little bit. Actually, we should just get into it right now to set up this question. I think it bears mentioning. So Sam Laporta this week, who's obviously been unbelievably awesome so far for the Detroit Lions and for fantasy owners. I think it's interesting that as far as I can tell, he was not listed on the injury report at all yesterday for Detroit.
Right.
Today, he didn't practice. He's listed as a cat having a calf injury. Midweek downgrades, they always set off alarm bells and red flags in my mind. I don't know if what the waiver situation is in JAC's league, but at the same time, and I'm doing this. I'm making note of this. I made a big note, and I'll even show you. I've got my Post-it note, my Laporta Post-it note. That's for me after the show tonight. I have to go through my leagues and make sure I either have a good backup tight end or I'm starting to put in bids to pick up somebody else for the next fab run. In regards to this, you should be making backup plans. This plan is more of a Titanic is too strong of a word. It's more of a significant roster move to trade Josh Jacobs to get Rachaad White, Adam Thielen, and Dallas Goedert. I mean, obviously, Dallas Goedert is a nice cover for you for Laporta. But what happens if Laporta plays this Sunday or he's fine going forward in week 7? Now you have a tight end problem. And you don't have Josh Jacobs, who, granted, has been underwhelming this year. You downgraded Rachaad White. You have Thielen, and we're going to get into Thielen later on in the show. But at the same time, who are you cutting? Because you are giving up 1 player and you are getting 3, which means you have to drop 2 players. 0.75 PPR. I always look at these deals where you are giving up the best player in exchange for 3 deals. Those are 3 players. Those are trades I never like to make, Matt. So I am, again, I don't know what's on your waiver wire, JAC, but at the same time, this is still not. I think this is slamming the panic button when you don't have to yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Thielen has been, I think, much better than anticipated, and he can certainly give a lot more utility to that roster. Absolutely. It doesn't even really matter what your wide receiver depth is. But I think the Laporta contingency plan should absolutely be waiver wires, and getting Josh Jacobs too as well on the other end. It's like, I'm not really out to trade for Josh Jacobs right now until that opportunity share has certainly been as sticky as it was last season and an increase from what we saw through his first few years in the league. But it's not something that I'm essentially investing this much into either.
Believe me, as a Green Bay Packers, I can't say fan because I'm not fan is short for fanatic. I am not fanatic about the Packers, but I do cheer for them. And I follow the team closely. I always think that the time to get a running back is the week before they play Green Bay and not the week after, when their value usually is a little bit more inflated. Josh Jacobs had a pretty good game against that Green Bay rush defense. The Green Bay rush defense, this is a good fantasy tidbit. Like anytime, like the Packers have a pretty, I love how these shows I do always turn into Packers shows. The Packers defense has a lot of talented pieces on it. I think the sum is less than their parts, if that makes sense.
Right.
They're like, you look at Detroit, let's compare those two. Detroit's defense is, even with Hutchinson, it is less talented than the 8 first rounders Green Bay is starting week in and week out. But the cohesion and the way they're coached and the way they mesh, the chemistry there, they are all chosen for a purpose, and that's why Detroit's defense is better than Green Bay's. Now, Green Bay's rush defense, bear in mind, Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator there, is scared to death, even with his insanely rich cornerback room with Eric Stokes, Jair Alexander, Keyshawn Nixon, Rasul Douglas. He is so scared to death being beaten over the top on a big play because the safeties are as bad as I can remember in Green Bay for some time this year. He is so scared to death. He always plays 2 high safety, 1 fewer player in the box. And that's why you should always be looking at breaking ties in favor of the running back going up against the Packers defense every week. They don't have to be that talented, but because of the scheme Green Bay has been played, and this isn't a new thing. They've been doing this the last 3 years and they haven't changed. Like, you should always be trying to do whatever you can to start within reason, to start your running backs against the Green Bay Packers going forward. Matt, I don't know if you've noticed that as well, but to me, it's glaring.
No, absolutely. And it holds up in what we call the true matchup rank in Broto Fantasy, which is essentially accruing points over average, like how much this player averages on a weekly basis and how much that team gives over the average to the matchup, or expected at least. And yeah, Green Bay has been what we call a run funnel for several seasons now, where because of that 2 high safety look, it's a funny, like an analogy, but it's also like literally what it looks like, because you can funnel production up the middle with those 2 high safeties.
Let's get into some of the news, injuries that are affecting our lineup decisions. 2 hours ago, according to Buccaneers.com, Mike Evans was reported as being limited in today's practice. He was the media portion practice. Mike Evans was not seen. Apparently, at some point later in the practice, he did take the field. So getting in a limited session is good. And obviously encouraging. This is a big showdown between the Buccaneers and Lions this week. My concern here is, given Evans' previous history, Matt, with hamstring issues, and given that he is sort of a borderline top 25 option this week, even if he's healthy, would you break ties again? I mean, obviously it depends upon who you have. Yep. But do you feel like you should break ties against Mike Evans this week? Again, we just talked about it. Detroit doesn't have the most talented guys in the world, but somehow they get it done every single week. And by the way, Tampa has a pretty good receiver on the other side of the field that Baker Mayfield can throw to in Chris Godwin.
Yeah, and we saw how that kind of shook out when Evans got the Lattimore treatment that he hasn't been able to deal with since Lattimore's rookie season. And Chris Godwin obviously had the best performance of his season this year, and a wide receiver 1 performance at that. Now, the Buccaneers are 4.5-point underdogs, so you're kind of assuming that pass game is going to have to increase a little bit. Now, Baker's also been passing at a pretty relatively good rate when it turns into fantasy production, obviously hyper targeting Mike Evans until that matchup against the Saints. Coming off a bye week, I don't love that it's one of those midweek injury designations. Still, like, didn't practice. I want to see a limited. A limited is going to give me lots of encouragement. And if he doesn't get in a full practice, or at least multiple limiteds before that Sunday, then I think I would be willing to break ties. It definitely depends where that high watermark is. But knowing what Chris Godwin can do in a perceivably good matchup, yeah, I think that you may have to question whether or not you want Mike Evans' floor, which hasn't been entirely enticing.
I have him only in a handful of leagues this year. I don't think I have him benched anywhere, Matt. But I also don't have a lot of great options, right. Like with injuries and everything. Like, and that's how you say it depends on who you have. But right now, at this point, I'm rolling with Evans. Could change my mind on it yet. But the upside that he has too, I think we always got to remember that.
Right.
Moving forward here to another receiver who is battling the injury bug with his ribs is T. Higgins. Now, Kelsey Conway, who covers the Cincinnati Bengals for the USA Today and the Cincinnati Enquirer, tweeted out this afternoon that T. Higgins told her it's looking, quote, promising for him to play against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday. Higgins was limited yesterday. He was limited again today. This seems like, okay, this could be wheels up for Higgins. Now, obviously, you want to get him in your lineup based on what you spent for him in, your salary cap league or your draft or whatever. But the Bengals are on bye next week, and it might just be easier for the Bengals to hold out T. Higgins one more week. Now, so I want to talk about that. let's just do that because there's a couple other questions I want to ask you about the situation.
Yeah.
But let's talk about T. Higgins first. If he does, assuming he gets another limited practice tomorrow, he's active on Sunday. What are you doing? Are you firing him up, or are you exercising a little bit of caution and keeping him on the bench?
Extreme caution. I'm probably like that high watermark that we were just talking about in the previous for Mike Evans is a lot lower for T. Higgins. And you kind of nailed it and wrapped it up in a nutshell for me. It is that bye week, and it is a long history of Zach Taylor playing T. Higgins while he's hurt and targeting him 0 times. We got a 4-game sample size now over 2 seasons where T. Higgins has gone into Sunday with a questionable designation attached to his last name and seen 0 targets on very minimal routes. So I am not at all interested in another T. Higgins donut when we know that a midsection injury may not limit mobility, but it's also one of those things that one hit, and now you're losing him for 6 more weeks. And obviously, you need to win every game at this point with the AFC North looking the way that it is, and you opening up your season 1-4. So, yeah.
And the other thing too, it's one of those weird situations. Even if you have Higgins, you might actually be rooting for him to be ruled out to save yourself from yourself.
The anxiety
right?
of it, yes, for sure, though, and because again, I will concede that those injuries last season that led to those donuts were lower body, and it might not limit his mobility as much, but I very much believe that the Bengals may roll him out in what is quote unquote a decoy game. Yeah. Against the Seahawks, who have, by the way, a very good secondary in the first place, where you would kind of be questioning, like, are they both going to produce against this top-end secondary?
And Jamal Adams, I believe, is back this week, too.
Indeed.
Cleared concussion protocol, so he'll be back. Interesting. I want to point out, like, nobody really – I shouldn't say nobody. I'm sure there's people talking about this. You might have even been talking about this, Matt. The box score for the Bengals last week. Now, they beat the Cardinals 34-20 without T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, 15 catches. Okay, I get it. Joe Burrow threw 36 completions that game. Tyler Boyd, 6 for 39. And some dude named Trenton Irwin.
Yep.
8 catches for 60 yards on 10 targets. Now, we know Jamar Chase. You're not watching this to say, hey, Balky, do I start Jamar Chase? Yes, you're starting Jamar Chase. But Boyd was playing a lot on the outside, which opened up a lot for Trenton Irwin. What do you do if you are a little bit hamstrung? There's not a lot of receivers out there. Let's say T. Higgins gets ruled out. Let's say you have the opportunity to pick up Trenton Irwin.
Yeah.
Do you pick him up and start him this week? Are we going to see lightning in a bottle 2 weeks in a row? I don't know how big of a thing this was. Like, was this just a random one of those weeks, or is this something more sustainable for Irwin while Higgins is out?
Potentially. And I mean, either way, it's worth a contingency based on their game slot. Like, if you want to keep Higgins into that Sunday last minute, he's a game time decision and really roll the dice. But if he does get ruled out, there is a viable pivot there. And yeah, like Trenton Irwin, kind of a pretty exciting performance, especially considering like the large percentage share of targets and receiving yards total that Jamar Chase put up, and then for Irwin to outproduce everybody else quite significantly. I definitely think that there might be a little bit more utility than just 1 week, but it's probably a pretty low floor as well against, again, what is a pretty good secondary here, Eric.
I think, especially with Jamal Adams, and I just got confirmation that he has cleared protocol. He's going to be playing against the Bengals this week. Do you have the spread on that? I should have that up. Normally I have that screen up on my screen, and I don't.
I believe it's in the favor of the Hawks, which isn't surprising, but I'm not sure the total. 3.5?
I'm looking at it right now. It is indeed. It's 2.5 for the Bengals, actually.
2.5 for the Bengals. Oh, wow.
And they are at home. The game is in the Queen City here. So Bengals 2.5.
Yeah, I guess coming off a big win, you're going to see the books favor them a little more.
And 44.5 on the total on that too. That'll actually be a good game. Unfortunately, that's a 1:00 game. I always like it when we get those really good games at 4:25. Yeah. But I'll be red zoning it anyway, so I don't even know what I'm talking about. Watch one game on Sunday. What am I, a plebe? No, yeah. I watch all of them all the time. Let's talk a little bit about James Palmer's report from NFL Network that changes could be coming after Denver took the L to the New York Jets last week. I have heard from people who cover, one person who covers the Broncos, that Jerry Jeudy and or Sutton could be gone. And Marvin Mims is going to be unleashed by Sean Payton after that because they're so excited about Mims right now. You are a dynasty guy for Broto. You are a big-time dynasty player. Is trying to add Marvin Mims prior to this game tonight or prior to the potential, cyclone of trades we could see with Denver after this game tonight. Is this your last chance to add Marvin Mims at a reasonable cost?
Probably, yes. And I would even say that you might be able to risk it by waiting until the game ends, because we've seen this. It is a business. It's a business. And I know there's not a lot of data that correlates this, but I have some pretty great examples that we can all remember, like Mike Gesicki before the trade deadline in the Dolphins, 24 fantasy points. Chase Claypool, the game before he got traded to the Bears, had a wide receiver 1 game. Like, the NFL and their organizations absolutely know how to showcase players before they ship them off for top return. And now, obviously, Gesicki did not get traded, but it seemed pretty obvious what they were doing in that Week 7 matchup, right? And then he had never been used before and never again after, immediately shipped out into free agency. It's just something that you do see. I think Jerry Jeudy could perceivably have an actual big game today, leaving Marvin Mims more in that. I mean, you can't even say tertiary. He's running the 4th amount of routes and has 4th highest snap percentage, yet leads the team in receiving yards. So I think they might wait one more week with all of those feelers out for Jerry Jeudy. Otherwise, absolutely agree with that, though. I think as soon as they unleash Marvin Mims, he's going to get incredible value increase. And that's going to be true for redraft leagues for those that are stashing him as well.
And remember, too, Denver had basically no draft capital this year. Still, they found a way to sell out what they did have to trade up and draft Marvin Mims, the first player that Sean Payton has ever drafted for the Broncos. Josh is hanging out in the YouTube chat. Would you try to trade Derek Carr, Jonnu Smith, and Christian Kirk for Amon-Ra St. Brown? Yes, I would. 20-man PPR. If you can give up those pieces. I mean,
20-man? Yeah.
Derek Carr, who was drafted super late. Jonnu Smith, who probably wasn't drafted at all. And then basically Christian Kirk, the only valuable piece here. And you're upgrading for a potential a guy who's drafted in the first round who's probably going to be back next week. Yes. You totally do that. I don't know if your counterpart in the trade is going to do it, but Josh, please go ahead and do that right now. Let's talk about Jeff Wilson, the Jeff Wilson conundrum going on.
I love it.
The Dolphins backfield, one of the most talked about backfields pretty much all season long. Frank Smith, who's the OC down in Miami, said that Jeff Wilson appears to be ready to play now. Has not been removed off injured reserve yet. However, we know Devon Achane is on injured reserve. We know that Salvon Ahmed has not played in several weeks, and we know Raheem Mostert's love affair with the training room. So I think Wilson is a guy that you have to make sure he's owned in your league. And if he's not, you go pick him up right now. In fact, I would even say this, Josh, you pick up Jeff Wilson first, and then you go make that trade offer. That's how important Wilson is right now. The issue this week for me is you're not playing Wilson. You're going to be starting Mostert in pretty much all your leagues.
Yes.
But Wilson going forward, this is a guy that you have to keep on your roster until Achane comes back, right? I mean, even though you might not use him, you got to make sure he's rostered.
Absolutely. He should be rostered in 100% of every format. That's Dynasty, that's Redraft, that's Standard, that's PPR, everything. I want every piece of this Dolphins offense, every single piece of it. Maybe cut the line at Braxton Berrios, but even Braxton Berrios should be rostered in some PPR leagues for sure.
I can see that. Yeah.
Legitimately. And I want every piece of this Dolphins offense ranked first in every single perceivable category: third down percentage, third down conversion rate, points per game, yards per game, passing yards per game, running yards per game. It's just Mike McDaniel created the most productive offense in the NFL with very limited talent in San Francisco, and then has the most talent he's ever had and as fast as any offense has ever been in NFL history. And that is quite literally proven with Next Gen's average speed rate. Their average speed rate per player is 14 miles per hour. That would be 3 miles per hour more than any other team in NFL history in the Next Gen era. So they're the fastest team that's ever played football. Yeah. I want every part of this offense.
Yeah, totally. And we know how good Mike McDaniel is at scheming stuff up for guys who have the speed, and speed is, you just can't coach it, right? So once you have it, you exploit it as best you can. Let's help out SJMP right now, another guy who's hanging out, or woman, I shouldn't say guy, hanging out on Twitch. KJ Osborne and Jerry Jeudy this week, week 6, needs to make the decision soon, obviously. Yes, we're aware there's a game tonight. In fact, we're going to get into the Better Cast coverage of that coming up in our next segment. Here's my issue with Osborne, and we'll get into this probably later on in the program as well. But, Matt, I think that there is there's a narrative out there that Kirk Cousins is not going to pass any less, that he's still going to be launching the ball because the Vikings are so bad. And it's just natural that the target share that Jefferson is going to leave out there is going to be picked up by a lot of people. And that could be true. My concern is there is a chance, a non-zero chance, that they do run the ball a little bit more. This could be a positive game script for Alexander Mattison and potentially Cam Akers this week. And we have to consider the fact that there's still a guy named TJ Hawkinson there who gets a ton of targets in that offense. Osborne should be rostered everywhere. You could probably flex him out, especially in the FFPC where you have that dual flex possibility. I could see that. But, man, Jerry Jeudy tonight, capable quarterback in Russell Wilson, a game that they are heavy double-digit underdogs. This could be one of those games where Jeudy has 2 for 15 at the half and ends with like 7 for 90 and a touchdown. I am playing Jeudy over Osborne tonight.
100%. And this specific question was a very hot one this week in just like the Broto Fantasy Writers chat. There were more than one of us that were dealing with this exact decision. And that's exactly where we landed on. And we do have some KJ Osborne notes coming up as well. But I think Osborne's also shown us who he is as a receiver. He's had starting roles before when, Adam Thielen got hurt or increased roles, I should say, when Adam Thielen was hurt and things of that nature. And it's just never produced. And they also have Jordan Addison now, who for all rights and purposes is a star wideout in the making and has shown all of the peripheral analytics and proper metrics to solidify people being as high on him as they were and currently are. So I really like Jerry Jeudy in this quote unquote showcase matchup, as I was saying. And I'm also not, I'm not against that. I think that running opportunity share, like Eric said, could absolutely increase. I do think there's some flex ability there, but yeah, Jerry Jeudy's the guy that we landed on, and I'm going to stick to my guns there.
Yeah, I'm sticking to your guns as well. I think those guns are going to fire off some good fantasy points, for Jerry Jeudy tonight. We're going to step out and take our first quick break, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. AS, Roberto Perez, you're going to get your questions answered when we come back. We're also going to talk about the better cast for the game tonight between the Chiefs and the Broncos. We're going to help you with these more or less props that we have going on with the better cast, as well as everything else you need to know before you submit your lineups. Don't go anywhere. He is Matt Ward from Broto Fantasy Football. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show exclusively on the Better Sports Network.
Oh boy, we got a big one. We got a big card here.
Let's go.
We got a super rookie.
Ooh.
Do you guys want to guess who the big card super rookie is? Because
I'm going to guess somebody from the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't recall who were rookies in those particular years. So I'm going to guess Michael Irvin.
Adam?
Jared kind of convinced me to go Troy Aikman there.
I'm going to read the description. In this player's NFL debut, September 10th, 1989, he produced an electrifying 68-yard punt return for a touchdown.
Sanders.
He became the first athlete in the 20th century to hit a home run, September 5th, 1989, for the Yankees at Seattle, and score a touchdown in the same week.
That needs a sleeve. That one needs a sleeve.
Top
100%.
super rookie, neon, prime time, Deion Sanders.
I wasn't that far off. He played for the Cowboys.
I was going to say Deion, and then when you said the early 90s Cowboys, I'm like, Aikman would be a good guess. So I go with your gut is the lesson there.
And there it is, the white and red Falcon jerseys that you said Deion came in with before they changed to black.
That was because the starting lineup for Deion his rookie year has got the red helmet with the white jersey.
Now look at that do. I mean, are you kidding me with that hair?
I mean, you got to have a headband with those curls. You got to.
That is sick. And this is a favorite card. Do we have any value on this card? We have to, right?
Let me see.
Give me a value here.
Let's see here on eBay. PSA 10 Gem Mint Deion Sanders, $149.99. And then a 9.5 is $6. So that guy might be a little bit. Then there's a much more reasonably listed one at $31 for a PSA 10. So it's got some value to it. Yeah, you might want to protect that one.
It's in excellent condition. I guess we have to worry about, is it centered?
Yes, that would be the next thing.
All right, well, we'll go through the process there. Maybe I'll just frame that one as a great moment in this show's history.
It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
$25 minutes until the top of the hour. Matt Ward at Psych Ward FF on the X machine does everything that needs to be done over at BrotoFantasyFootball.com. I know those Pet Trap boys like to pretend that they run that. You're that is handling everything. So we really appreciate you co-hosting tonight with me. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Let's go into these chat before we get into the Better Cast. Let's get into the chat room questions right now. And man, I think I waited too long on this. And by the way, thank you so much for the questions. Roberto, if you can post your question again, I can't scroll down far enough to see it. I don't think I'm going to try to do it again here. And I can. Perfect. Roberto, don't post it again. I got it. He just lost Justin Jefferson, did Roberto Perez. He got offered Chris Olave and KJ Osborne for Joe Burrow. His quarterback would be Kirk Cousins, who's already been starting for him, which makes sense. Now, you get Olave, you get Osborne. Osborne is going to have value for you until Jefferson is back, which there's a non-zero chance he may not come back this season. Olave got taken off the injury report today. Derek Carr is practicing in full. I think better things are in store for Olave here. You're already playing Cousins. I don't know how much you're losing with Burrow. If you're in a situation here where you're in a dogfight for the playoffs, this is the exact type of deal, Matt Ward, that can keep you afloat and keep you competing here. I might trade Jefferson in this deal here.
Yeah, I agree, especially in a redraft format. This obviously gets a little more out of hand when you're talking about Dynasty, but when you're looking like Olave, the gap between Olave and Jefferson is obviously massive, but Chris Olave is also a superstar wide receiver one, and he's only scored one touchdown this season, still averaging an insane amount of points per game. And yeah, the last two games have been a little bit bad. That's because Derek Carr has a very significant AC joint sprain and was supposed to miss multiple weeks, but just turned into a glorified handoff and check down machine for Alvin Kamara, which is fine for the Saints because we did blow the doors off the Patriots. And obviously the first game had some pretty disparaging results with Carr. I think it was 13 catches for 33 yards, an NFL record for least yards in most receptions. Like, not great. But with that said, like, I'm not overly concerned about Michael Thomas's increased target share. If Derek Carr becomes healthy, it's Chris Olave's offense. This is exactly the type of trade that you need to make if you're not one of those 10-0 or over the median or 5-0 teams.
Thank you, Anthony Rivera, our producer tonight, pointing out AS. I want to answer your question as well. And this is one I'm torn on, Matt, quite frankly. He had Anthony Richardson. He or she had Anthony Richardson. They're trying to get both CJ Stroud and Sam Howell, which I agree. I mean, those are both great pickups here. Who first? Howell has two good matchups. Stroud has the Saints, and then they're on bye next week. I don't know which way I lean on this. Sam Howell has been a borderline top 12 fantasy quarterback for the majority of the season so far. And we all know the story with CJ Stroud. Who would you rather have first? I mean, is it simply Howell because he does not have the bye week in the next 2 weeks? Would you put him ahead of Stroud, or would you put Stroud for the untapped upside in the draft pedigree?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I do want to lead into that is in a vacuum and for rest of season. Absolutely. When you're looking at 11 games left to be played, it's CJ Stroud for me, without a doubt. I mean, the progression that he has made, the records that he's broken, only 3 quarterbacks with over 1,200 yards in their first 3 games, him, Andrew Luck, Cam Newton, currently holds the record for most consecutive pass attempts without an interception in a quarterback's first season with 177. Like, the kid is he is everything he was sold to be and so much more, because obviously he didn't even go first overall. With that said, if you're in desperate need of that fill-in position and are just going to rotate Howell in when you drop Stroud during his bye week anyway, which obviously is a pretty common practice for bye weeks in 1 QB leagues, then yeah, you got to go with Howell because you're going to play him longer. And then you have the potential, hopefully, in that 1 QB format where you can still pick up Stroud after that bye week.
George Play 01. And by the way, I'm going to agree with you just because I don't have strong feelings about it. So that's the way I'm going to agree with you on that as well. George Play 01 in the YouTube right now. He's 5-0. Tua Tagovailoa, Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, Cooper Kupp, Chris Olave, Dallas Goedert, James Cook.
Yeah, no wonder you're 5-0.
Yeah, no kidding. Nice team. Justin Fields, he has on the bench behind Tagovailoa. Should he trade Fields and Kenneth Walker for Bijan Robinson?
Yep.
Glenn Lowy, longtime FFPC player, very successful high-stakes player. I've had him on a couple of different podcasts before, and one of the things he always says is, especially in Dynasty, but I think this applies to redraft, elite talent over everything else. Bijan Robinson is the best player in the deal. He's the elite talent. If you can get that done, you get that done. And you add Bijan Robinson onto that team. McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, and James Cook as your top 3 running backs. You're doing things right. Dominic Guzzetti, longtime bulky. What up, Matt? Olave or London, and then Ramondre Stevenson or Damian Pierce. This is half point PPR. I'm still rolling with Olave over Drake London this week. Off the injury report, I think things are going in a very positive direction. In fact, he's in for some positive regression. One of my favorite phrases of all time for Olave. And now this is the one I'm a little bit torn on here, Matt, and I'll ask you on this. Ramondre Stevenson this week in the broken New England Patriots offense is in Las Vegas. And then Damian Pierce, who kind of has been underwhelming all year, is actually playing against Olave's Saints at home. I have a slight lean to Stevenson, but this is splitting hairs here.
I have a slight lean to Stevenson as well, and it hasn't been as historically elite as it has been during the entire Cam Jordan era, but New Orleans does still have a phenomenal rush defense, top 10 in DVOA. Pierce is really only a pure rusher. The Patriots, man, like it's so hard to feel even down on Ramondre Stevenson after his, some pretty menial performances because that offense in and of itself has been so terrible. I still think that Ramondre Stevenson is by far the most talented offensive weapon that they have. And I hope that the coach, Bill Belichick, takes over from the GM, Bill Belichick, a little quicker and starts actually utilizing the weapons that he drafted.
The one thing I don't think we've ever had on the show before, Matt, is a kicker question. We're going to answer that.
They're my favorite.
Here we go. So you'll probably know more about this than me. But Mr. Alternation, Harrison Butker or Brandon Aubrey, these guys are both starts, great starts this week. I look at kickers like this. I look at the implied team total according to Vegas for both teams. You're looking at 27 for the Cowboys on Monday Night Football against the Chargers. Tonight for the Chiefs, you're looking at an implied total like 33, 32, 33. So I'd leave Butker here over Aubrey. Yeah. And I'll tell you this, if you have a more scientific way of looking at it than me, please share because I'd love to know.
No, and I mean, it kind of just comes down to weather tonight. There's quite a bit of wind in Denver, and I don't expect Harrison Butker to have to kick that many big field goals. Mm-hmm. Like they're going to come, his points are going to come from extra points. And then once the Chiefs get really up, like it's going to be a lot of clock control and just beating down on that Broncos rush defense, who's averaging a conceded 186 yards per game rushing right now. Like that would obviously be an NFL record if those averages held up. It's one of the worst run defenses in the history of football. So I'm going to go Brandon Aubrey there because, better weather game, like, and still just as good of an option in all sense of the things, like as far as their point per game totals are concerned right now. But I mean, Harrison Butker and the Chiefs offense, like both of these guys are going to get you points. The wind isn't that bad.
Now isn't there something to be said for the Taylor tornado taking over Arrowhead tonight to trump any of the other weather that might be going on in Kansas City?
Potentially.
There's something to be said for that maybe Butker gets the Swifty bump. I don't know. And that will probably, but not definitely, conclude the Taylor Swift portion of the program tonight. Ventro in the YouTube chat right now, would you trade Nico Collins and Amari DeMarcado for Romeo Doubs and Jerome Ford? For me, I like Ford. I think Dobbs is okay. But, dude, Nico Collins has been a stud this year.
Yeah.
He's been reliable. And DeMarcado is sort of a guy that he's replaceable. I mean, he might be replaced as soon as this week. I don't think it's going to be this week. But as soon as, next week, you could see Keontae Ingram as the main guy there. Now, maybe the odds are against that happening, but there's certainly a more than a non-zero chance of that happening. I'd stand pat. Nico Collins is the best player in this deal. You hang on to him.
Agree.
Let's see. Start to Josh Downs, Jerry Jeudy, or Joshua Palmer. This is interesting. Okay, so I'm going to play Jeudy. Downs had a pretty productive week last week with Gardner Minshew in there. Where do you stand on this? Would you rather play Joshua Downs this week or Joshua Palmer? We already said Palmer is on Monday Night Football this week. Palmer is at home against the Dallas Cowboys, and Josh Downs this week again catching passes from Gardner Minshew and not Anthony Richardson is at Jacksonville. I kind of lean towards Palmer, but I don't know how you feel about this, Matt.
I kind of lean Palmer as well. Now, there may be a narrative to buy into that after the Chargers bye week, they'll finally utilize the guy that they drafted 21st overall instead of never utilizing him. But with that said, that may be a product of Quentin Johnston's rawness and his talents more than it is of anything. Josh Palmer's incredibly savvy with that offensive scheme. He's been with the team for years. He's a favorite target of Justin Herbert, specifically when his other receivers go down as well. I'm a big Josh Downs fan, so I can't give him any shade, but I still think that I'm going to lean Palmer ahead. Now, with Gardner Minshew in, though, this is when you see Josh Downs really excel. As in the 3 games that Minshew's had over 50% of the snaps, he's averaging 12.4 PPR points per game. And that's very serviceable with increased ceiling, obviously, against Jacksonville. But I still think for one more week until you see anything from Quentin Johnston, and obviously Palmer leading the team in receiving yards, receptions, targets ahead of Keenan Allen in his one game as the starter when Mike Williams went down. Yeah, Judy and Palmer for me.
Let's talk about Dom Gazzetti's other question here. This is a tough run. I'm be honest with you, Dom. I don't envy you. This is not a good situation. He's got to pick one of these guys between Zach Charbonnet, who's at Cincinnati, Cam Akers, who's at the Bears, and then Latavius Murray, who's at home against the Giants. Some pretty good matchups there, I would say, for the latter two with Akers and Latavius Murray. That said, I'm still picking Charbonnet. Full PPR. He's been a threat out of the backfield. I don't know if Akers has a role yet. Latavius Murray might be going back and forth between the second and third guy for Buffalo with Damian Harris there. But Charbonnet is the unquestioned second guy. Should get passing down work. He's got the worst matchup, but I'm going to play Charbonnet.
Yeah, I think so there too. That's probably where I'm leaning. Yeah, especially I'll take that bye week narrative of rookies starting to get a little bit more work after they've been with the team an X amount of time, have that extra week of preparation. I like Charbonnet a little bit more. I don't think Akers is really going to give you much. You're talking 4 carries for 50 yards. He might get 1 reception in there. That's kind of like the max ceiling that you can hope for Akers as long as Alexander Mattison is healthy, I think. And then Latavius is inside the 5. That's who's getting the touches. But other than that, he's got not much going for him, especially in the passing game. So it's not a great way to look, but somebody that is getting receptions and is getting looks, yeah, I'll start Zach Charbonnet.
I butchered Roberto Perez's question before. Roberto, I'm very sorry. He wouldn't be trading Justin Jefferson in that deal. He'd be trading Joe Burrow for Chris Olave and KJ Osborne. Okay, so now you get to keep Jefferson. You lose Burrow, but you already have Cousins.
More.
This is even a better deal than I thought before. He's also thinking about sending Burrow and Evan Engram, getting CeeDee Lamb back. He's got Mark Andrews. Yes, I mean, if you can pull these off, that is a good trade as well to pull that off. Let's go to Mr. Alternation again. Cortland Sutton or Josh Downs this week. Cortland Sutton, we have to help him out because Cortland Sutton obviously plays tonight. So Cortland Sutton in Arrowhead against the Denver Broncos, and we talked about Josh Downs, who is going against the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. This is closer for me. I guess I'm going to say Sutton, but I don't. This is a coin flip for me. The chances are you got a 50-50 shot of getting this right, and I don't know what the right call is. Again, you ask me tomorrow, I might say Downs. Today, I say Sutton.
Yeah, I'm gonna concede with you there. I'll go Sutton as well. A big fan of Josh Downs, and I know we've got some more positive things to say about him as we get through here, but it's still Cortland Sutton for me in this offense right now. Against perceivably great game script for the passing offense.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about something negative about Josh Downs, and this is Josh in the YouTube chat. Do you value Josh Downs or Christian Kirk higher for the rest of the season? It's Christian Kirk for me. Listen, I've said this on all year. I have never been a Calvin Ridley guy for the 2023 season. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but this guy sat out a ton, coming to a new offense, new quarterback, new OC, new everything. I was very skeptical that he'd be getting it done. Crushed it the first week. He's been kind of quiet since then. I know he was pretty good this past week. Christian Kirk's been really good. Outside of that clunker in week 1, he's been really good. He's got the track record. I love the offense in Jacksonville much more than I like the offense in Indianapolis. So, yeah, I mean, if you have the opportunity to flip Downs for Christian Kirk, you do that every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
Yep, I agree with that. And if you believe in the follow the money narratives too, like Calvin Ridley is definitely getting paid a lot less than Christian Kirk is.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. That's a great point. We've been teasing all night. Let's get into the Better Cast. If you're not familiar, this is a game that you can play with all of us. In fact, many people that are hanging out with us on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, what have you, are going to be in the Better Cast tonight. You can actually play it during the Broncos and the Kansas City Chiefs game. This game kicks off in about 25 minutes. You can predict what's going to happen in the game to score points, win prizes, chat with the community, hang out, talk about the big plays, the top performance, the bus, which we could see tonight in real time. Watch Thursday Night Football, have this on your phone, play the free contest, and win tickets. The more questions you answer, the more tickets you win. You can redeem those tickets for authentic NFL signed gear and collectibles. Here's what you do. You go on the App Store. You go in the Google Play Store. You download BetterCast. It's a free app. You have to be 18 years or older. Matt Ward is going to help me set my pregame BetterCast questions right now. Matt, I don't know if you knew that you're going to be making these decisions for me, but you are. So here we go. So let's kick things off and go to Jerry Jeudy, more or less than 53.5 receiving yards. Here's the question. Does Jeudy go more or less than 53.5 against the Broncos tonight? I talked about this earlier. This is a positive game script for him. Could be a bad first half. Should be a very good second half. I lean towards the over in here, but although I should look it up to see what he's already done this season, how does this one grab you more or less?
Yeah, I'll hit that narrative once again. I think it's a bit of a showcase game for Jerry Jeudy. It's definitely a high game script for passing volume. He has been seeing an increase linearly in targets and opportunities since he came back healthy. Obviously, that first game back, not so great. Second, a little better. Third, a little better than that. So I do think you're going to see a showcase game from Jerry Jeudy. And 53.5 yards is that is right around that I'm not nervous point. If that makes any sense. Like, you give me 60 yards from Jerry Jeudy and I'd say, I really got to calculate this over under. But in what I perceive to be a good passing matchup, Russell Wilson averaging 242 passing yards per game. He's not getting wins, but he's getting the job done for fantasy purposes as far as supporting his wide receivers. And they're a little bit difficult to predict, but I'm predicting Jerry Jeudy this week.
Yeah, we had Mike Shope from the Deep End Fantasy Football podcast on last week. And we were like, I think it was 42.5 for DJ Moore. And we're like, over, under, let's lean towards over. 2 plays into the game, he was already over. Jerry Jeudy has only hit 53.5 once this season.
Yep.
However, he's hit 50 3 times in his 4 games. So we're going to go over with Jerry Jeudy there. Okay, moving on. Next one is, let's go to Travis Kelce. More or less than 64.5 receiving yards in this game. Even odds on both of them. Where do you stand on this one? Because Kelce is dealing with that low ankle sprain, although he, I don't know if he got the Swifty bump from getting his ankle cured. I'm not sure. Tonight, Travis Kelce, 4 games this year. He has hit 60 yards in 3 of those games. He's hit 64.5 in 2 of them. Negative game script here, but he's so integral to that offense. I'm kind of leaning towards over even with the ankle.
Yeah, it's really hard to take anything under 70 yards for Kelce. And I know the averages are obviously pointing towards him being a little bit below that this season. But I mean, I think we were saying it at the top of the hour. Last game, there were 9 different players that had a target from Patrick Mahomes, and he attempted 41 pass attempts. None of those guys had more than 6, except for Kelce. And he only played 39% of the snaps. Mm-hmm. So they put him back in there after that high ankle sprain. They said it was up to him. He felt good enough to go. He's been practicing all week, even though it is on a short week. He obviously gets, a little bit more of that veteran leeway to just have limited practices anyway. But yeah, it's really difficult. And the Broncos are bad everywhere, but they've been really bad against tight ends as well. Over 128% increase in expected production because they haven't played good tight ends and have allowed insane production to all of them. And then again, 22.0% over the expected production to wide receivers, which Kelce has proven time and again to be the Chiefs wide receiver 1. It's hard to take the under here, but that's a high watermark that I could see why it's even odds.
Right. Yeah. And so we're going over here. I mean, clearly we have to. Point. There's just no way to do it. Brower Bravado. Hey, what's up? Let's real quick start Tua Tagovailoa over Patrick Mahomes. Can't do it. I'm still playing Mahomes. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean
Mahomes over Tagovailoa. Yeah,
I actually think that's not even that crazy. Tua is so good. I think obviously the injuries pegged it down a little bit coming into the season. People forgot he had a great ADP. He's winning people a lot of leagues so far, right? That 5-0 team we just looked at to a QB1. I would start, especially again. I think it's a good matchup where the Chiefs can go up early really easily, and they can do it not through the air. So it's kind of
So
one
would
of
you? Okay, I almost feel like you're defending Tagovailoa here. Would you start Tagovailoa over Mahomes? Tagovailoa against the Carolina
Yeah,
Panthers?
sorry, I thought we were in agreement.
Oh no, I said Mahomes over.
I'm going to start Tua.
Okay, you're gonna and I don't have a quarrel with that. I think both these teams are significant favorites this week,
Yes.
so you can make the game script argument for both of them. I tend to lean like it's one of those things, and this is a horrible way of looking at it, but this is how I've always looked at it. I look at it, which one is going to tick me off less if I bench them and then they go off. It'd be Mahomes for me. If you want to start Tagovailoa, go ahead. I think he's going to have a Buffalo game. For me, I'm gonna roll with Mahomes. Getting back to Mahomes' game tonight. Javonte Williams, more or less than 35.5 rushing yards tonight. Javonte Williams has played 4 games this year. He has completed 3 of them. He has hit more than 35.5 in each one of those games. However, most of those games were before the rise of Jaleel McLaughlin. And, oh, by the way, Samaje Perine still in that backfield. And it's going to be tough for getting rushing yards when you would think Denver's going to be throwing a lot tonight. I don't have a good feel on this, Matt. What do you think?
I did go with the under here when we were making our notes. I did go with the under, and I was going to mention as well, like this would be the first time that he hit that under this season in a complete game. But I also don't think Javonte is going to play a complete game. And yes, he might suit up, get through practice, everything, but you're looking at a guy that didn't play last week with a late hip injury, which obviously is going to affect mobility greatly. 2 running backs that have established themselves as utilizable backs within the offense already. And then a short week Thursday with no time really for recovery and no practices that weren't listed as limited. Like he has no complete practices yet. So I really don't think that Javonte is going to be much more than, maybe a decoy, maybe kind of like a change of pace guy. But I do think that they're going to run a large committee and be passing quite often, which you could absolutely have 65 scrimmage yards. But to say that those are going to come in the rushing game, I'm not buying it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different when you include the scrimmage yards aspect, when you limit it down to rushing. And Chris Lute is actually asking us, what do we think about Jaleel McLaughlin? I like him, and I think he's going to factor into what the Broncos do tonight. He's one of their better playmakers that they have right now. He's fully healthy. He's not coming off a torn ACL. I like him. I think, again, FFPC league, where you got to pick out 2 flexes, I think you can make the case that that McLaughlin could be the second one. I'm not going to go crazy with him tonight, sort of where I stand on that. Now, here's an interesting one, Matt, and I think this might be a bit of a trap one. Isaiah Pacheco rushing yards, 77.5. And I look at what he's done so far this year. He's only hit that total once. Now, he's hit 23, 70, 62, 115, and 55. And you say, well, Balky, what are you doing? Pacheco is playing a horrible rush defense tonight. And while that is true, bear in mind that he played a horrible rush defense last week. Only got 55 yards. He played a horrible rush defense, back in September in the Chicago Bears. Only got 62 yards. There is a case to be made here that for whatever reason, the matchup isn't always the decider here. I wonder if under is the sneaky play here, or do you think Pacheco and the Chiefs are just going to overpower him so much that we have to say over?
I think it's a trap play. I'm in complete agreement. And there's not really any strong data, as I've been the data guy trying to, at least back my opinions and narratives with solidified facts. But it feels like one of those trap games. It absolutely, he should walk to 77.5, and I don't think he will. And part of that is exactly what you said, is it's his career best game, obviously coming in, and it is career best, not just season best, in week 4. Yes. Like 115 yards. Like, you got to think that's his best mark ever. Right. So like even his greatest mark in his career is only 30 yards over this total that we're looking at right now. And he's yet to do anywhere close to that in any other game this season. It feels like a trap. And I'm not necessarily sure that Isaiah Pacheco will, get over that mark this week. It's going to be a close one too. And you're going to be sweating garbage time out. It's basically like how rough this is going to get. But
and that's the other thing, Matt, to consider is like, again, I hate predicting blowouts and I hate predicting garbage time, because oftentimes when you do, it never happens and it never materializes. But if that does happen tonight, what's the reasoning that you want a Super Bowl contending team to expose their running back to more hits, more collisions, when they have guys like Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that, guys they can deploy out there? So I think we play the under here, and it's even money. I think we play the under, and I think that could be a sneaky one we get tonight, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
Russell Wilson, you just mentioned it.
Yeah.
He is getting 240. He's averaging 242 and a half passing yards per game, right? Did I quote that stat that you quoted correctly?
Yep.
His passing yard total is only at 218 and a half tonight.
Yeah.
Is this a slam dunk over, or what am I missing here?
To me, it is as well, and I don't understand why it's so low. Yeah, 242, and the Chiefs are giving up 224 yards to opposing quarterbacks this season. So both of those averages suggest over. The game script suggests over as well.
So we're going over on Russell Wilson, but what are we doing with Patrick Mahomes here?
Maybe
268 and a half passing yards. That's a lot of passing yards.
That's a large amount.
And when you consider that this dude, this should be more of like a walkthrough type game tonight. And again, I hesitate to say stuff like that because oftentimes when you say it, it happens the exact opposite, and then you're in a dogfight the whole game. Dude has gotten that total. Patrick Mahomes has hit this total, 268 and a half. He's hit it 3 times so far this year. He's missed it against Detroit in week 1. And he missed it against the Jets in a close game. Mm-hmm. He missed it against the Jets where he just scraped over 200 yards that game. It's a lot of yards, but if anybody can get it done, it's Mahomes. We did take the over with Kelsey. Is that enough for us to say, okay, if he hits the over with Kelsey, he's probably going to hit it overall? Or is that too bold? I mean, is the under the play tonight?
I mean, I
and real quick, too, I'm sorry to interrupt you. No. We did take under on Pacheco.
Right.
And 77 and a half. So if we're trying to hit the Yahtzee here, do we say that Mahomes hits the over?
You got to kind of play the correlation. And then that's kind of it's somewhat of a correlation with Pacheco's over of rushing yards, or under rather. I absolutely think that he can walk to this and should as well. And if you're going to take the over on Kelsey, which absolutely we're doing, I think it kind of correlates. 268 and a half but the issue with that is you could see him get 5 touchdowns with 228. Just because of the field position, right? So that's really where we're like, now we're going to push ourselves into the game script that we predicted with the yardage total not coming, but the overall points being there. But yeah, play into the correlation is what I'm doing this week.
So we will play into that correlation. And speaking of that correlation, how about this, Matt? The team to score first tonight, Broncos and Chiefs, we're both getting 10 points for either one. It's a slam dunk. You got to pick the Chiefs here. There's no reason to pick Denver to score first. Okay. All right. So we'll move on. We'll move on from there. The total points scored in the game, 47 and a half is what we have it on the Better Cast right now. I'm looking at Vegas. It's also 47 and a half. How do you feel about the total tonight? I don't have a strong feeling either way. It is Thursday night. We saw a lot of Thursday night unders over the years, but I don't know. That seems like kind of, and maybe you know better than me, it seems like that's kind of gone by the wayside. We've seen a lot of overs hit on Thursdays too. Recently.
A little bit. Yeah, no, a little bit it has. And I mean, Thursday night football, they've obviously tried to put on better matchups, but you're not going to see it. That short week coming off of multiple car crashes the week before, like it's never going to yield phenomenal high-paced football. Like I just don't think we're ever going to see that. And I will say that the Chiefs and Broncos combined currently average 49.8 points per game total, just on average together. So a 2-point differential to take the under on a Thursday night matchup on a short week. As much as I've, gotten into the passing offense and obviously thinks there's going to be some positive overs as far as the weapons are concerned, I do think 47 and a half is a comfortable under you can take.
Okay. I'm the way that you sold me on that. I think like the other thing too, 47 and a half, like the Broncos have to factor into this as well. And I don't know how much they will. So let's go under.
A 47 and a half could still be 31 and 14, right? Which is 31 and 17 actually even, but yeah.
So I see how we'll roll with the under here because I see a path to victory there, maybe more so than the over. And then the last one tonight. Now this is funny. Well, not funny, but it's interesting. Which team will win the game? We get 10 points if we choose the Chiefs and they win. We get 50 points if we choose the Broncos and they win. And if it's a tie, we get 75 points. Let's throw the tie out. Is the Broncos at 5-1 too much to pass up, or do we have to take this seemingly guaranteed? Mike Shope and I took the Bears last week when we were getting, I think, 4-1 on it, and we were right on that. Where do you stand on this?
I like
roll the
5-1
dice with the Broncos.
I don't know, almost anything. But
you want to roll with the Broncos here tonight?
I mean, just because you're going to nail all of the under-overs, that's going to cover your other
We
points.
hope we don't. We don't know if we will. We hope we will. But yeah, let's.
But, I mean, I like those odds a lot, but you could also kind of ring the narrative of like, don't get cute, take your 10. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So you want to go with Denver or Kansas City? I think it's. Yeah, I think you sold me on the fun aspect of Denver.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're like go all in for it for sure.
All right, let's do that. Our pregame questions are locked in now on the BetterCast. Remember, you can participate and compete against us. Go to the App Store or Google Play, download the BetterCast, enter in those pregame questions. There's going to be a ton of questions during the game as well, and you can compete. The more questions you get right, the more tickets you get, and the more you can cash in those tickets for the authentic NFL signed gear and collectibles. Real quick, actually, I don't want to do real quick. We got let's do this. I want to answer Super C&B challengers. We'll get to these other questions after the break. Super C&B challengers. Let's do a quick would you rather. Would you rather have DK Metcalf the rest of the way or Chris Olave, Matt Ward?
Olave.
Would you rather have DK Metcalf or Jalen Waddle?
Waddle.
I agree on both those, by the way. Would you rather have DK Metcalf or Devontae Smith?
This would actually really hurt me to say anything other than Devontae, so I'll say Devontae, but that's really close.
I'm going to say Devontae Smith. Here's the thing. I still think that we are in for a late season surge of
From
Jackson
JSN.
Smith and Jigba, and that's what scares me with
Agreed.
Metcalf. So Super C&B challengers, yes, try to flip Metcalf for any one of those guys. We are on board with it. He's Matt Ward, at Psych Ward, FF on the X. I am Eric Balkman from the FFPC. He works for Broto Fantasy Football. In fact, he pretty much runs it. We're going to come back. We're going to have full coverage. We're going to be watching the game while we do the second half of the show tonight. Hour number 2 coming up next to the FFPC High Stakes Fantasy Football Show right here on BSN.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, and they let him be the quarterback for a long time, too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there. And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl. And when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game.
Yeah.
That they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, like, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky, is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yard go.
It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
6 minutes Until kickoff here on Fantasy Football Night in America on the Better Sports Network. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC, the HSFF Hour, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course being joined tonight by @PsychWardFF on the X. You could follow him there. Check out all his work at BrotoFantasy.com. Matt Ward from BrotoFantasy.com. What's your official title there? Like director of content? Is that what it is?
Director of content, lead writer, leader of dynasty.
Yeah, pretty much everything. Yeah. He does everything there, and you do a really good job. As I try to get my.
Gotta give the boys the shout outs though. They definitely put the work in too. I appreciate all the
well,
all the love.
The other thing too is Mike Petrop at Broto Fantasy, massive cog in the Fantasy Football Players Championship. So we have to give him a shout out, and obviously his twin brother Jason has been very successful in the FFPC Pros versus Joes in the past as well. And Tim, Tim drives the podcast for sure, and then obviously Casanova. Everybody you got,
he's the heart.
There. He's the heart. Yeah, exactly. Let's go. Rapid fire on these start sit questions here. Josh Jacobs or Breece Hall, rest of the season PPR. Rather have Josh Jacobs the rest of the way, even though that sounds a little insane based on what we saw last week. I still think the volume is going to drive it. Dalvin Cook's been kind of like, whatever. But Breece Hall's still recovering from that ACL. Here's the thing. I think in a trade, if you have Breece Hall, you'd have to include more pieces to get Josh Jacobs. If you're trading Josh Jacobs, you can get Breece Hall plus. So that's the way I stand on that. I'd rather have Jacobs. Where do you feel? How do you feel about that, Matt?
I mean, I do think that Breece is you have to take last week with a grain of salt playing against Denver. But for the most part, like I believe in him rest of season pretty heavily.
Good Lord, I cannot kill the volume on this broadcast. I am so sorry. Just the national anthem is blasting me out right now. I apologize for.
I loved it.
Anyway, So
no, but I see where you're coming from for sure. Like the volume is guaranteed. Breece is still very much in a committee of dysfunction on a bad offense as well. But I believe in that kid almost more. Like week one was first week back from an ACL too. We're forgetting, and they were essentially like he played so good that they had to be like, "You're running too hard. Sit down." Now we have to put you on a pitch count. So.
Let me ask you this. And Motion Man, this is Motion Man's question here in YouTube. Should he trade either of them for Austin Eckler? Yes, you should trade either of them for Austin Eckler. That is a massive upgrade on
for
both
sure.
of them.
100%. Yeah.
Vision on the YouTube right now. So how old do I sound on the YouTube? I gotta get this question in for Vision. Start Rashee Rice or KJ Osborne. No brainer for me. I'm playing Osborne. I can't trust any of these Chiefs receivers.
100%.
So make sure Osborne is in there. Okay, let's get into this. If you are looking for some action with the FFPC, remember the weekly challenge is going on at myffpc.com. There's no draft, there's no salary cap, no convoluted rules. It's the same format as our popular FFPC playoff challenge. You can play in a 10-team, 30-team, or 100-team contest. You just pick your players by 1 o'clock on Sunday. Let them ride throughout the rest of the week. The results are determined by the total points accumulated by each individual entry. Results are going to be, there's a classic format. There's a slim format available. You can play with kickers and defenses or without. $35 is where it starts at. You can win up to $2,500. New users are going to get $25 off their first FFPC entry of $35 or more. Just use promo code ALARM at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Motion Man is offering Jacobs for him the smarter move. Smarter move if you want to get the deal done. I think that it kind of depends who you're talking about. Because if it's Matt Ward, Matt would tell you that he's more likely to do the deal if it's Josh Jacobs. I'm probably more likely to do the deal if it's Hall, right? Because it depends upon how you value. So what I would do, I would offer him the player that you personally think is the lesser value, right? And if he accepts it, great. If he doesn't, then you go with plan B. And so that's kind of on you. It is your team.
I agree with that.
And figure that out for sure. Okay, let's talk about this. Where do you stand on some of these players? Some of them we've already talked about tonight. Some of them we haven't. Matt Ward, where do you stand on James Cook after that awful rushing performance in London against the Jags?
Historically awful. One of the only running backs in the NFL history to have at least 5 carries. And yes, he did only have 5, but at least 5 carries and negative yardage.
Yeah.
So yeah, -4 yards on 5 carries, not so great. And he's done, in all honesty, like I don't want to be negative about any players. I want all of these guys to succeed. I'm not a hater by any means, but James Cook has done absolutely nothing to impress me. Nothing at any point in his career throughout, Georgia to here, like nothing. He's never done anything to impress me. I've always felt like he's nothing more than a change of pace guy, and certainly has gotten
But
more of a.
that's the thing is like the Bills aren't treating him that way anymore. Which like I was always the same belief as you, but now I see what the Bills have done or haven't done in the running back room, and now we have to sort of adjust to that.
Exactly. And with that said, too, though, it was until week 4 for him to get his first touch inside of the 10. And week 4 was one of his least efficient and worst fantasy performances of the season. And that was the one that he actually scored the touchdown on the goal line. And then following week, again, -4 for 5. Like, until the Bills actually treat him like an RB1, I don't think that I'm going to either. Like,
and that's fine. I don't think you have to. I will say this about James Cook. If you're looking to move on from him, wait till after this week when he plays the Giants. If you're looking to acquire him, make the deal before he plays the Giants.
And I still think he's a great, like for fantasy purposes, I think he's a great RB2. If he's in my flex, I'm ecstatic about that. If I have top end depth on top of him, I'm ecstatic about that ceiling that continues to kind of increase. But still, we've seen that floor, and we've seen Latavius Murray get a lot of work inside the 20. We've seen Damian Harris get a lot of work in short yardage situations. So with that in mind, it's not quite that opportunity share where I'm feeling enamored by, but absolutely, to concede to that, I've adjusted majorly. James Cook is much better than I even ever gave him credit for.
Miles Sanders did not practice today. This is due to a shoulder, not the groin issue that he had been dealing with. The Panthers are basically 2 touchdown underdogs in South Beach this week against the Dolphins. I wonder what we do with a player like Chuba Hubbard. If Sanders is to miss, is he a sneaky start, or is that negative game script going to keep him out of your lineups? Where do you stand, Matt Ward, on Chuba Hubbard for week 6 against Miami?
I do think he is a sneaky start, and Chuba kind of gets some pass work involved in that offense as well. So negative game script could actually benefit his ceiling, as he's not the most efficient rusher. But you saw last 2 weeks, not just last week, but the week before, more snaps, more carries than Miles Sanders in the past 2 games. And obviously that had to do with an ailing groin injury that is now turned into, as I'm just finding out, a shoulder injury on top of that, and not even getting in limited practices, but complete did not participates. Yeah, I think Chuba is actually a sneaky play. And I think rest of season, it's going to dissipate a lot. It's the same as the Eagles almost, like just in the sense of like, if it's not Booby's backfield, it's nobody's backfield. Like it's his backfield or no one's. And when he comes back and kind of maintains that health, regardless of the disparaging results, I do think that Chuba Hubbard's opportunity share will dissipate quite a bit. But for sure this week, I've slided him into a lot of flex plays already.
Tyjae Spears was an interesting guy during NFL draft season. This is the guy, remind me, is playing without an ACL in one of his knees?
Yeah, okay. Or MCL, I think. Or MCL. I think one of his knees has neither of the ligaments.
Okay, yeah, which is crazy when you consider that this is a guy who outsnapped Derrick Henry multiple times so far this season. Last week, 7 carries, 34 yards, 4 catches on 5 targets for 35 yards. He was in the same backfield as Derrick Henry numerous times, and scored his first touchdown. He was actually running with the Titan starters on their first drive. Yeah. At this point, he's much more than an injury away type guy. He's much more than just needs the opportunity type guy. He's got the opportunity. He looks like he's got something going for him going forward. Man, where do you stand on Tyjae Spears for the remainder of this season? And quite frankly, if you want to give us the dynasty angle on this, we'd appreciate that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can kind of wrap them both into the same thing, because Tyjae Spears reminds me a lot of like a poor man's Tony Pollard. Just an absolute, like Hall of Fame ballot running back in front of him. But every touch seems to be something explosive and something that is turning into great things for your fantasy. And almost 100% over the entire season, up in the high 90s of the Titans' third down snaps, which has obviously led to a lot more passing work than Derrick Henry. As you mentioned, outsnapped him in 3 of the 5 games this year, and is now starting to share the field with him on some downs as well. Yeah, I think Tyjae Spears is somebody you have to I think you're going to pay a fair market value for entry cost right now. It's certainly higher than it was during rookie drafts, and you can say the same thing about redraft. It's definitely higher than the ADP of a waiver ad or that late round one injury away shot. But I think he's somebody that you can still get in on the market on a fair, very fair level. And he is more than one injury away. He's more than just a high upside handcuff. He is a flex worthy player that, if anything were to happen to Derrick Henry, and potentially maybe not even anything significant as he's been eating into his opportunity share all season, you're talking about a league-winning asset.
Let's get some, this isn't necessarily breaking news, but Jaleel McLaughlin getting the start tonight and takes the very first play from scrimmage 9 yards over Javonte Williams, 9 yards. And then the first down is picked up by another rushing attempt, this time by Michael Burton, the fullback for Denver, both getting carries ahead of Javonte Williams.
I love it.
Cortland Sutton is out near a first down on the first passing play of the game for Russell Wilson in the offense. So Cortland Sutton, one catch for about 10 yards here as we are underway. Let's talk about Jonathan Taylor here. I don't know how you feel or how you felt about him last week. I had Zach Moss benched in pretty much every league I had him in, and I started Jonathan Taylor in a significant amount. I saw Shane Steichen today say something like, we're going to get Taylor more involved. He's going to be in there for more than 10 snaps this week. Is that fantasy worthy? I mean, like to brag, yeah, he's going to be more involved, more than 10 snaps. I don't really understand that. I'm very skittish on starting Jonathan Taylor this week. Where do you stand on Jonathan Taylor in week 6?
Yeah, week 6, I think you still might need to see a little bit more time. You have to treat this like he didn't really end his training camp and then obviously missed the first 4 games of the season. So this is game 2 for Jonathan Taylor without a training camp. It's gonna take some time for him to get his wheels rolling. I absolutely do believe that, but for everything that I've seen Zach Moss do and what I believe about Zach Moss, like, this is much more a product of the offense, the offensive line, the run schemes that Shane Steichen has brought in, some of the same ones that he was developing in Philadelphia, which obviously led to great results with a rushing quarterback. Gardner Minshew is going to change that up a bit, but still, like, Jonathan Taylor just got paid $48.5 million. You think they're going to give 20 touches a game to Zach Moss? You're out of your mind.
Let's go back to YouTube. Josh hanging out. Trade question. Russell Wilson, Christian Kirk, Jonnu Smith in exchange for Geno Smith and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Again, get the best player in the deal. Would I do that? Yes, I would do that if I can get Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, no, I don't think that there's much of a perceivable difference in one QB leagues between Russ and Geno.
Right.
They're both going to give you week winning outings.
Javonte Williams at this first carry of the game, he busts out roughly about a 10 or 11 yard game to get a first down into Kansas City territory. Fletcher Cox, welcome back. Thanks for taking time out from your Eagles practice schedule to hang out with us on YouTube. Should I start Jared Goff or Dak Prescott this week? I know Dak is a good matchup, but a good matchup doesn't guarantee a good performance. He has been disappointing lately. You know who hasn't been disappointing? Jared Goff. I'm going to play Jared Goff this week over Prescott.
Same. Not even going to hesitate.
Where do you stand on, let's skip Romeo Doubs. We talked about him a little bit earlier, and Josh Downs. Let's go to Dak Prescott's real life teammate here, Matt, and Michael Gallup. Where do you stand on Michael Gallup, a guy who kind of looks like the number 2 receiver over Brandon Cooks in that offense? I don't know if he's the number 2 option because Tony Pollard and Jake Ferguson are still there. Where do you stand on Michael Gallup? For me, he's got to be rostered even in a shootout type game this week, unless I'm hit with injuries or buys. I think Gallup is still on my bench.
Yeah, I agree. Still on the bench. Definitely still needs to be rostered. I mean, hopefully nothing, knock on wood, happened to CeeDee Lamb. But yeah, Gallup would be thrust into a pretty big role. And it's not necessarily even like a vacated targets. It's literally just like vacated routes run. And obviously he's getting a lot of those routes anyway in 2 wide receiver sets. And the way that the Dallas Cowboys offense is operating with Brian Schottenheimer is incredibly frustrating. If you remember how badly he tanked Russell Wilson in that offense in Seattle, he's seemingly doing it again. And maybe that's a product of Dak more than it is of Schottenheimer with some of those erratic throws and those interception numbers holding up from last season. But for my money, like, Michaal Gallup is the number 2 wide receiver. Absolutely. But you kind of conceded to it. Pollard, Lamb, Ferguson, all ahead of him in the pecking order still. I should say, like, I shouldn't say we should skip over Josh Downs. Did we get into it enough with Josh Downs to make your point clear before? Because this is a guy that had a really good game last week. And again, we got to think about it in terms of Gardner Minshew now going forward. Right. Non-zero chance that Anthony Richardson doesn't come back this season. And I feel like Downs was pretty good. And in full PPR leagues, man, he should have already been rostered. Now we're in flex territory, not only this week for Downs, but going forward. His role in that offense, Matt,
I don't want to say he's defense proof, but I feel like he's going to have a low ceiling and high floor pretty much every week.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I mean, he currently leads all rookie wide receivers with the most targets and 0 drops. He has 0 drops this season on 30 targets. In 3 games with Gardner Minshew above 50%, as we were leading into earlier, he's averaged 12.4 points per game and a target per route rating of 24.2%. That's absolutely elite alpha numbers. Yards per route run as at 2.1, which he doesn't quite qualify for because he hasn't run as many for the actual lead in the NFL, but that would lead the NFL currently if he was amongst the top qualifier receivers with over 100 yards or 100 routes run. I'm absolutely I've loved Josh Downs coming in. If you watched him at Penn, he's such a phenomenal player, and you watch him at UNC and plays so much bigger than his size, and you could argue the reason that Sam Howell got drafted, so all of that, I definitely think rest of the season going forward, and Michael Pittman still holding that role as well is going to draw the number 1 coverage, which benefits the rookie so much to not have to deal with the top's assignment.
And I'm not an Alec Pierce guy. To me, Alec Pierce is just sort of I don't want to say a gadget guy at this point, but he's not a focal point of the offense. And now you have Jonathan Taylor coming back as well. Let's go back and talk about, actually, before we I want to go back and talk about Romeo Doubs, but the Broncos have it 4th and 3. They are going for it. Russell Wilson rolled out. He is swallowed up by that Chiefs pass defense. So the Broncos fail on 4th and 3. Chiefs taking over inside their own territory, but very, very close to midfield with 9:24 to go in the first quarter. Romeo Doubs is interesting. Quiet first 2 games, including the big win against the Chicago Bears in week 1. 4 catches for 26 yards. Did get in the end zone twice, but touchdowns are not sticky, which is why I usually don't bring them up on the show. Not this past week in week 5. Week 3 and 4, 25 combined targets, 168 yards on 14 catches and a touchdown. Christian Watson comes back this week against the Raiders secondary that was missing 2 pieces, had to bring up practice squad guys just to field a secondary in that game. 1 target, 4 yards. No bueno. 1 catch, 4 yards on 4 targets. No bueno. Doubs is, for best ball, we're not giving you advice for that. That's already locked and loaded. Season long, where you have to make lineup choices from week to week, I don't know what to expect from this guy. And quite frankly, with Watson back now, I'm sort of leaning towards just not worrying myself with the headache of trying to figure out if this is a Doubs week or not. I don't know, man. I'm very, very lukewarm at best on Doubs the rest of the season.
Same here. And a lot of that comes into a little bit of a Jordan Love analysis too. He's been one of the most wildly erratic quarterbacks in the NFL this season. And it seems to just not be talked about as far as the talking heads in sports media are concerned. So I'm here to bring that for you. 55.6% completion rating. Obviously not great. Thrown 8 interceptions this season, but
6 interceptions.
Yes. Sorry. 6 interceptions this season, but 3 of them have come in the last 2 games and 5 or 3 of them in the last game and 5 in the last 2. Right. So, and the completion percentage in the QBR and the, EPA per play was all leading towards where are these turnovers? Because he's just chucking this thing all over the place. And yeah, some pretty impressive off kilter throws as well. He definitely has that arm that he relies on where he doesn't need to be set foot and will just let it go. But obviously leading to a lot of turnovers lately, and as they should be. I don't think that Jordan Love's going to be able to uphold 1, 2, 3, 4 options. And that's where Romeo Doubs becomes the odd man out, because Christian Watson and Luke Musgrave last week combined for 14 targets, 7 apiece.
And don't forget, if Aaron Jones ever comes back, he's going to factor heavily into the passing game as well, too. So
absolutely
something to keep in mind. Let's go back to YouTube here. Rob Phillips, Tank Deller, Marvin Mims, rest of season in full PPR. He has to drop one of those guys to activate Jeff Wilson. Do we see Judy or Sutton getting traded? Now, in regards to the trade question, I always think that when it comes to trades, you should never count on it. You should never bet on it. They usually don't happen. For every 100 trades that are discussed and rumored, about 1 gets consummated. So while I do think there's a possibility of
especially
Judy,
in the NFL,
especially in the NFL, I do think that there's a non-zero chance that Judy and or Sutton could be traded. I don't necessarily think that it is all that likely. Maybe 50% at best at this point. So who would you rather have the rest of the way? Would you rather have Tank Dell or Marvin Mims the rest of the season, Matt?
In a vacuum, it would be Tank Dell. And if you were sticking around at the top of the episode, or if you're just popping in, I'm very high on CJ Stroud and all of his incredible accuracy and his historic record-setting pace. He's currently on pace to break the rookie passing yards record by over 700 yards. Like the kid is a franchise-altering quarterback, and he's been playing like one with insane volume as well. You're talking like 50, 48, 35, 37 pass attempts, in each game. I do like in a vacuum Tank Dell over Marvin Mims. And I guess if you're having to force a drop there, because I do obviously want to activate Jeff Wilson and get every part of that Miami Dolphins that I can. I suppose in that vacuum, I'm going to take Tank Dell because I still think he's going to put up incredible numbers and not have to rely on a potential trade or roster altering move for him to really see that role where he's an every week starter.
A little bit of trickeration in the game just now. Travis Kelce on 1st and 10 for Kansas City catches about a 9-yard little hitch pass from Mahomes, hesitated, and then pitched the ball back on sort of like a quasi hook and lateral play to Noah Gray, who ended up rushing the rest of the way for a first down.
Kelce loves those laterals.
Yeah, it's great. He ran it well. Didn't he used to be a quarterback? I want to say Travis Kelce used to be a quarterback.
Wildcat quarterback.
Quarterback. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So Chiefs now 1st and 10. They're at the Denver 46 and moving as Mahomes rolls out on first down. Tried to throw it back. Now he looks over the middle. He's got Kelce again for an 8-yard gain, 2nd and 2. One last question for Fletcher Cox. Rondale Moore or Hunter Henry at flex this week. Now, I think this is compelling if you're talking about an FFPC format where it is tight end premium. I would probably say Hunter Henry in that case. If it's standard 1.0 PPR for everybody, I'm going to lean towards Rondale Moore. Matt, agree or disagree on that philosophy?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. I'm the biggest Rondale Moore fan on planet Earth.
Well, then what the hell is going on with him this year? Like, I don't get it.
I don't get it either. But Gannon coming in and going like that little video, that hilarious like meme video of him going, shots, explosives, you can run, phew, phew. Like that made me so happy. And you are starting to see Rondale used more as a gadget guy. Now, obviously that term has like a lot of negative connotation to it, like a gadget player. He's not a target earner. He needs manufactured touches. But like Rondale Moore with 8, 9, 10 touches a game is a absolutely must-start player. And again, led the Cardinals in rushing yards last week, 50, only needed 3 rushing attempts to do it. Has seen his target shares obviously whittle back and forth around that 15%. That is more so of that gadget Kadarius Toney range. You don't love it. But if it's non-tight end premium, yeah, I like Rondale Moore. And I definitely think that, and whether it be a part of function or dysfunction, he's going to see some more backfield touches as well.
Leave it to the better boss to always talk about something that we haven't talked about. I did not even put my finger on this. It's the Gardner Minshew Revenge Bowl between the Jaguars and Colts this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Colts over.
4 touchdowns right now. Maybe I got to start breaking ties in favor of Gardner Minshew in my Superflex leagues. That is insane. Good on you, better boss. Patrick Mahomes has it now, 2nd and 10. He hits, is that Rashee Rice right there? About an 8-yard game, roughly. Chiefs are going to face 3rd and short in Denver territory. John Stewart, he has to drop one of these players. Which one should he drop? Jahan Dotson, Elijah Moore, Tyjae Spears. Never. What does Adam Krautwurst from the Deep End Fantasy Football Podcast say? Never drop running backs. You're not dropping Spears. Comes down to Dotson or Moore. I think I might lean more towards Moore. I'm not really sure what's going on in Cleveland lately with Deshaun Watson. I think Dotson has the higher up.
Not good things.
Yeah.
Would you drop Moore? I'd lean more as well here. A big Dotson fan, obviously hasn't turned out into much, especially seeing how many pass attempts they had last week and him just getting 5 targets. But I mean, so did Terry. So it's like that's a Ron Rivera calculation thing more than anything. Like that's coaching scheme. I do like Dotson more than Moore for the rest of the season, and completely agree. You're not dropping a running back, especially one like Tyjae Spears.
Yeah. And in that situation too, where you have an older, heavily used running back in front of him. I'm not going to try to pronounce your name on Twitch right now. But you know who you are. Question: start 3 of these players: KJ Osborne, DJ Moore, CeeDee Lamb, Jordan Addison, Josh Downs. I'm going to use Occam's razor here. I'm going to play Moore, Lamb, and Addison. I'm going to leave Osborne and Downs on the bench. Is that the way you
Me as well.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
I absolutely think Addison over Osborne would be the easiest, argument to decipher here, because obviously it's DJ Moore start, CeeDee Lamb start.
You're welcome, John Stewart, for answering your question. And man, when are you going to come back to the Daily Show? That would be great if we could see that happening again. Patrick Mahomes has his third down pass batted down. The Chiefs settle for a 35-yard Harrison Butker field goal. In the elements, it is good. 3-0 Denver is what we're looking at, with Denver expected to get the ball back here after the break. Jacoby Myers, where do you stand on him? This is a guy that the Packers on Monday Night Football went out of their way to make sure that they curtailed Devontae Adams, except for when they had linebacker Preston Smith covering him on a couple of third downs. But Jacoby Myers was the beneficiary of that. This guy was a target hog in New England. Why the Patriots let him get away, I will never understand. But Jacoby Myers right now, if you got him in your leagues as your number 5 or even 6 receiver, you're loving life, because you can start him as like a second or third receiver going forward here.
That's where he was going. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I love Jacoby Myers. I always have. Go back through the Broto podcast archives. I've always been a big Jacoby guy, something me and Mike didn't agree upon, and now he's acquiescing to my favoritism.
Mm-hmm.
He's showing all of the characteristics of an elite wideout in his first season with the Raiders, much to the dismay of Patriots fans, I'm sure. As you said, he's averaging 25.7% target share, 14.5 PPR points per game, double-digit targets in 3 of 4, and through 4 games, 25 receptions, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, 36 targets. So that's wide receiver 3 finish, wide receiver 25, and a wide receiver 10 finish. Wow. The only game in which he didn't finish that high, obviously the wash that was Aiden O'Connell, and 3 consecutive fumbles on 3 consecutive drives. So that Raiders offensive game, you have to kind of wash away. That sample size is not going to be sticky. Yeah, you have to believe in Jacoby Myers. And seemingly the presence of Devontae Adams is not affecting this whatsoever, because they're not using Hunter Renfrow at all. They're not using Michael Mayer in the tight end. They don't have many targets getting checked down to running backs that aren't Josh Jacobs, right? It's like it is a 3-man passing game with Jacobs, Myers, and Devontae Adams.
Let me frame this last question for you, Matt, in terms of something we just talked about in Myers. KJ Osborne, until Justin Jefferson gets back, where do you stand on KJ Osborne being a poor man's Jacoby Myers in full PPR leagues?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. Absolutely. And into that said, too, like, what was the thing that was holding Jacoby back? It was incredibly unsticky, sure, unpredictable, but touchdown production. And I could very much see Addison still being that deep threat, that touchdown guy, the guy that's getting more points. And KJ Osborne commanding around a 22 to 25% target share, obviously a reduced total from what Jefferson is leaving behind, but an increased total for him, and putting up, 7 catches, 64 yards in quite a few games, things of that nature. But again, since we're here, like, I think KJ's kind of shown us who he is. He's played 4 seasons in the NFL. His first season, only special teams, 9 games played, 0 fantasy points, 0 targets, nothing, unless you count special tems points. And then, 9.3, 9.8, 8.4. Like, he's not what that he's in. To me, KJ Osborne rather, he's like Van Jefferson. Yeah. He's an excellent real life wide receiver 3. You have to put a defender on that guy. You have to account for him, but it doesn't mean much for fantasy.
He's a non-pedigreed guy that's in a good situation right now. We could see something good going forward here. We got some more good stuff going forward for the remainder of the show. We're going to step out and take our final break. Caden, the Colts fan, Connor C, and Chris Lude, we're going to try our best to answer your questions as soon as we come back. And we'll also get to some more start-sits here as you are watching your second screen here in your 2-screen experience on Fantasy Football Night in America with the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network. Matt Ward from Broto Fantasy Football hopping aboard with me tonight. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.
I like to eat my feelings. So when I'm like super sad, single serving pint sizes of Ben and Jerry's, I just start shoveling that in, and it makes me feel bigger and better. But so let's eat our feelings here. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk football players, food. We're going to pair them up. Who is represented by what food? All right. I want to just shout out Hal Alexander in there for CMC. Christian McCaffrey is Rocky Road ice cream. A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
How's it going, Hal? I like it, man. You know it. I love me some Rocky Road ice cream. Bijan Robinson prime rib. You know what? Bijan Robinson prime rib with a baked potato and some cream spinach on the side. That's what I'm talking about. That is the King's dinner. And Bijan Robinson, I don't care if the dude from The Athletic says only 301, touches. You know what? In honor of Card Sharks, I'm going to say, guys, that I think that number is going to be a little bit higher there for Bijan Robinson. So get your knife, get your fork, you got your steak, you got your Bijan.
Yeah, that's what's up. You're on death row, and they say you get one last meal, and you just say Bijan Robinson.
Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I'm totally down with that. Love it.
I got to jump in on one real quick because Mr. Scamper said Kareem Hunt is candy corn, and I actually had a player, Tyler Boyd, was going to be candy corn for me, and basically it's that nobody likes it, but it's always there. It's always there, and somebody always puts their hand in and grabs some and has some, and they're like, well, and afterwards they're like, why did I eat that? That's Tyler Boyd. He always gets drafted, and he's just kind of there, and nobody knows why. Nobody knows why they take him. Nobody knows where it comes from. Where does the candy corn even come from? Like, it's just there. It's just there.
It's the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on Better Sports Network.
High Stakes Fantasy Football Show homework tonight. Get the Fantasy Alarm All-Pro subscription. Unlock all the content for all sports, including annual draft guides, one-on-one expert access in the Discord. You can analyze matchups and trends in your league with the League Sync. Lineup Generator is integrated with Fanjections, daily and weekly rankings, Value Vault, position coaches, and more. And check out the waiver wire, ownership percentages, projections, stats, and tools there as well. Build better lineups, guaranteed. Get access to everything Fantasy Alarm offers all year. Just go to fantasyalarm.com/win. fantasyalarm.com/win. You are watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show here on the Better Sports Network. Matt Ward joining me from Broto Fantasy Football to this evening. I'm Eric Balkman from the FFPC. Javonte Williams starting to make things look good for Denver. 3 carries, 31 yards tonight. And then Russell Wilson throws a pick. Kansas City now has the ball back after the Denver turnover, as they have pretty good field position here. I'm trying to see where he returned this ball to. It's short of midfield, but about the 44-yard line. Patrick Mahomes is going to have it. We're having some fun on the Bettercast too, by the way. If you have not downloaded it, go to the App Store or Google Play. Download it for free right now. Play along with us tonight and win big. Ooh, big play to Travis Kelce here. Kelce is going to go inside the 20-yard line, out at about the 17-yard line, showing off for Taylor Swift tonight, as now the Chiefs have the ball in the red zone. And, of course, then we get the shot of Taylor Swift looking very dapper tonight. The highly successful, talented, and intelligent Taylor Swift taken in the game at Arrowhead. There is a flag on the play. It is on the Broncos' decline. Let's move forward here. Let's get to the the chat right now. In Dynasty, let's go to Connor C's question. Bench 1, Josh Downs or Jordan Addison this week? I'm benching Josh Downs, Matt.
Yeah, me too.
Chris Lewis has a dynasty question. The Jefferson owner is in first place and is offering a first-round pick and second-round pick in 2024 with Calvin Ridley and Gabe Davis. Calvin Ridley and Gabe Davis. Is that a fair offer? I'm not sure I understand the question. The Jefferson.
I think the Jefferson over is giving him basically what is 112 and 212.
Okay, in exchange for Ridley and Gabe Davis. I got it.
With Calvin Ridley. Wait, no.
Yeah, what's the other side of the deal here? The Jefferson team needs wide receiver help. I think he wants to acquire Ridley and Davis, and he's offering his first and his second, right?
I got it. Punctuation is important here.
Okay.
He is an offer of a first, a second, and 24 with Calvin Ridley and Gabe Davis fair to acquire Justin Jefferson from the owner that's already in first?
No, I don't think it's enough because it's elite talent over everything else. You're going to have to bite the bullet here. You're going to have to offer something better than that. You can't just acquire all these assets.
The way that this trade like works in my mind is if Calvin Ridley is Chris Olave.
Yeah. And then,
or a CeeDee Lamb, a Jalen Waddle. It has to be that just the tier below.
And bear in mind, this is Dynasty. This is not a serious, career-altering injury for Jefferson. This is a soft tissue injury. So you have to have bigger things in mind. You're going to have to offer up something better and less quantity, quite frankly. Let's go to Cross EDLRL. I don't know. Cross Dr. L. I don't know. Would you trade Gabe Davis for Rashad White for my bench? Yes, I would, because I want to acquire running backs, as many running backs as possible. And Patrick Mahomes is now throwing an interception inside the 10-yard line.
What a Thursday night
It
game.
looks like it's Justin Simmons picking him off. So now Denver will take over inside their own 10. Yeah, I mean, if you don't need receivers and you need running backs, that's a perfect trade.
Yep.
In a vacuum, I'd still rather have Rashad White. I think he's the best player in that deal for sure. Okay, moving on. Let's get into some lineup advice for week 6. Where are you going to go here if you are facing a decision where you have Cole Kmet, potentially starting Cole Kmet at home against the Vikings, or Kyle Pitts at home against the Commanders, Matt Ward?
Man, like, it is basically the question I have to ask myself: is a 1-game sample size enough to ignore all of the menial games that I've had with Kyle Pitts in my lineup, and Cole Kmet obviously putting back-to-back top 5 tight end performances on the line as well, and is clearly the number 2 target on that offense that is obviously increasing passing volume finally as well. I think I'm going to go Cole Kmet here.
I would roll with Kmet as well over Pitts. This is interesting. So we had a trade or a waiver question involving these 2 quarterbacks. Who would you start this week between Sam Howell and CJ Stroud? Sam Howell is at the Falcons. CJ Stroud is at home against the Saints. I think your love for CJ Stroud knows no bounds. You're going to say Stroud over Howell.
I'm probably going to say Stroud over Howell. And he's playing my boys who have, again, absolutely demolished the Patriots, but have also had their holes in the secondary for sure. And then that's where they are exploitable rather, with that strong rush defense, the Demario Davis, the Cam Jordan combo. So I'm going to go Stroud.
I'm going to lean towards that way as well. Jerome Ford or Jaleel McLaughlin, no point in answering that since the game already started. I don't know why I put that in there. I'm kind of an idiot.
It would have been Jaleel anyway. So
okay, yeah.
We did talk well of him.
There you go. Gabe Davis or Drake London. Let's get into that one. We had a lot of Gabe Davis.
That's tough.
Had a lot of Gabe Davis questions tonight. Gabe Davis is a guy who is going to be going up against the New York Giants on Sunday Night Football. A guy who I believe, and Matt, you can tell me what you think on this. I think he's been outperforming. Like, there's some regression to the mean coming with Davis with how efficient he's been. And then on the opposite side, I think there should be some regression coming for Drake London here against the Commanders. I would lean towards Davis because of the matchup here, but I could easily be wrong, and London's the play.
Yeah, and I kind of lean Davis too, and obviously Drake London is the more talented player. Like, there's no denying that, but that, again, is a 1-game sample size enough with that offense, and I'm not entirely convinced that it is for me. We've seen this with Arthur Smith before too. London has had 1 positive game and then 4 negative games. Gabe Davis is obviously on the upward trajectory. Completely agree with Eric that there's some negative regression coming, a little bit of a double down there, but I don't think that you can really, the positive matchup is there, a very similar floor too, because London's floor is nothing. So, I think it's Gabe Davis.
I think it's Gabe Davis. The Bills' offense was just humming along so good until this Jaguars game. That's in London. I mean, at games like that, I tend to throw out because
they did start to get rolling again in that second.
They did, yeah. They were coming on late in that game for sure. Let's go back to YouTube. Would you trade Lamar Jackson for Trevor Lawrence and Joe Mixon? I want the best player in that deal. I think that might be Mixon over Lamar Jackson because of the scarcity at the position. But if he's not, if the quarterback, if it is important and you got the running back depth, if you're not making this trade out of necessity, then I think I'd rather have Lamar Jackson. If you are making the trade out of necessity, I think you could make the case that Lawrence and Mixon might be an upgrade over Jackson.
Yeah, agreed. It kind of depends on your running back depth on that roster for sure. I think that's the biggest calculation that you have to take into consideration.
Derrick Henry for Kenneth Walker. Who do you want the rest of the way? Duffy asked him.
Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's a young man's game. It's an up and comers game. Derrick Henry, as great of a Hall of Fame career as he had, he is not an up and comer. He's not a young man as far as running backs go anymore. I'd rather have Kenneth Walker. All right, Josh. I've seen you post this question in here several times. I believe we answered it already. I could be wrong on this, Matt, but he keeps posting it. Russell Wilson, Christian Kirk, and Jonnu Smith for Geno Smith and Amon-Ra St. Brown. We're saying you make that deal, right? Like that.
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I wasn't going crazy.
For sure. No, yeah, we've covered it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And I mean, not a bad roster to make that deal for.
Right.
Christian Kirk and Tyreek Hill being your 2 top wide receivers, Jonnu on the bench. Like, yeah, you have to try to make that deal. You have to push that deal.
Patty in the YouTube chat, rank these guys best to worst rest of season. Chris Olave, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, Puka Nacua. Okay, this we could get some differing answers here. I am going to go crazy here. I'm going to say, well, maybe not that crazy. I'm going to say Olave, Nacua, Metcalf, Ridley.
No, you're absolutely right.
Wow.
And as long as you didn't have You didn't have Puka over Olave. That's basically
Okay.
the only line that I would really draw. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to believe that Puka Nacua will not continue what he's did. 5 games is not a small sample size. Things are starting to get sticky with this kid, and it is the greatest wide receiver start to a career that we've ever seen. That's not hyperbole. He has the most targets and most receptions of any wide receiver in their first 5 games ever.
Cross Dr. L just made that trade. He acquired Rashad White. Should he be starting Rashad White over James Cook this week? I'm going to say no. I like that matchup.
Against the Giants more.
You still got to play James Cook here.
But that's a great, yeah. I really like Richie White shoes coming up. I still think there's going to be a lot of development with him within that offense as that offense starts clicking with a new quarterback, new coordinator, things of that nature. But that opportunity share is not going anywhere. I like Sean Tucker a lot. He's a non-factor.
Patty also wants to know DK Metcalf right now wants to flip him for another receiver. What could he do? I mean, Chris Olave would be an interesting buy low here. But the thing with that, I mean, you always have to look at the depressed assets, the guys that are coming off bad games when you want to trade for these guys. Now is the perfect time to trade for a guy like Olave. So
Jalen Waddle
would be another good one. Absolutely. Because those are upgrades for the season. But right now is when you can get them in cheap. Damian Pierce or Michael Thomas, flex question here this week. Would you rather, who would you rather play this week between Pierce and Michael Thomas? So Damian Pierce on your CJ Stroud led Houston Texans offense is going to be going against your Saints too. This is tugging at your heartstrings. This is tough for you. So Damian Pierce against the Saints or Michael Thomas in that same game on the road at Houston.
Yeah, I mean, it is starting to seem like, full practices now for Derek Carr. He actually is getting a little bit more throwing work in practice where, like, the first game that he came back, he didn't even throw in practice leading up to the Kamara 13 for 33 game, which is just wild to me. But with that said, obviously that usage is getting increased in practice. They're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with his injury, with his arm. The Texans have a very good secondary. I think Michael Thomas is the play here.
I think... I mean, I'm assuming full PPR, and so in that case,
yes, that's very important as well.
That's why I would say Thomas here. Maybe not the biggest ceiling in the world, but quite frankly, Damian Pierce has not been a ceiling guy all season long either. Patty and on the YouTube chat, Zach Ertz or Logan Thomas this week PPR. Man, I tried to pick up Logan Thomas in the leagues he was available. Given the injury situations with Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave being on bye, God, I had way too many rookie tight ends. So I was trying to get Logan Thomas. I'd rather start him. Ertz is a decent start against the Rams. So I think both these guys are good tight end starts. I lean towards Logan Thomas based on what he did last week against Chicago.
Yeah, the target share that Logan Thomas has been earning in his 3 healthy games or whatever is actually absurd. So I would never think I would even say this starting the season. I don't think Logan Thomas was even on my draft radar as I have a train going by. But yeah, it's going to be Thomas for me, I think.
That's the CJ Stroud trade, leaving the station. Matt Ward missing the CJ Stroud train. He's got to hop on later on. We talked about both these players earlier. Let's get into this. Let's assume FFPC tight end premium scoring. Jahan Dotson or Hunter Henry this week. Which one would you rather play? And this always gets interesting when you're getting a 1.5 per catch for the tight ends. Jahan Dotson, obviously at the Atlanta Falcons this week. Hunter Henry is at Las Vegas. Which one would you rather play in a tight end premium league? Obviously, non-tight end premium, you're playing Dotson for sure. Tight end premium, I think I lean towards Henry here.
Yeah, for sure. I think you do as well. And in that tight end premium format for the FFPC, I definitely want Hunter Henry. Even in a full PPR, like I could perceive an avenue where Henry sees as many targets and receptions as Jahan Dotson does this week. You're 5 for 45. Who gets the touchdown?
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I mean, like they're not sticky, but you have to consider it. So let's do this. The Better Boss chiming in with a Darnell Mooney question. It's interesting because Darnell Mooney was a free agent in a couple of my leagues where it's 20-man rosters, 12 teams, and you have to start 3 receivers. I haven't checked my fab yet. I don't think I got him, but there's a non-zero chance I did. He says Mooney did not look good last week. The Vikings have to worry about Fields and DJ Moore. Where do you rank Mooney this week? Still, to me, as a quasi-desperation flex. Exactly. I want to try to find anybody else to start over Mooney. Could have a big game. The matchup's there. But man, with DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, I think and Fields, being able to run out of the backfield. So I think that desperation flex is the best thing I can say.
Yeah, low end flex, wide receiver 4.
This is from the Cross Doctor L. Is Lawrence worth holding on to if I already have Fields and Richardson, or should I try trading one of them? And that's on Twitch. Here's the thing, Matt. Single quarterback league, to me, it's always been pretty impossible to trade a quarterback. Like it doesn't work. So is he worth holding on to with Fields and Richardson? Probably not. Somebody might pick him up. I just don't know what you're getting for him. And the other thing to consider too, and I'll bring this up.
That's just it. Like, I mean,
I'll bring this up just real quick, Matt. You're also talking about spending time shopping him around the league. Like, I don't know if we have the time to do that. So to me, I would probably lean towards, just cutting him and letting the chips.
Yeah. What's your labor worth?
Right. That's exactly
right. I completely agree with that. Of course, absolutely try. Like you're holding on to too many quarterback assets, almost even in a super flex league as well. Like you 2 or 3 is fine. So if you can fly in a streamer there for the one of those 2 bye weeks type of thing, then yeah, absolutely. I would. And on that note, probably work in reverse order. Like I think Richardson probably has the most perceived value. But he's going to come back for you potentially eventually after 4 weeks. Fields obviously healthy would be the one you want to hold on. And Lawrence, should be the one that you should ship out first. But if it doesn't work, I think, getting a massive return on Fields, incredible heights over the past 2 weeks could yield some pretty good stuff too, if you have somebody willing to bite.
Last question here. We'll assume FFPC tight end premium. Tyler Higbee or Justice Hill? And I don't know if Hill is going to get the start in Baltimore, if it is Edwards, but where do you stand on this? Which one would you rather play? Tight end premium scoring. I think Higbee's kind of interesting here.
Me too. And I think Higbee's kind of established that 5-catch ceiling, 3-catch ceiling for 50 yards in the tight end premium leagues and inside of that Rams offense. Cooper Kupp coming back hasn't changed much of the way that it functioned. It just kind of took Puka, instead of earning 22 targets, he earned 11 and Kupp earned 12, right? Like that's really the dissipation of what happened when he returned. And on a limited snap share, he played 79% of the snaps. So, that's what that offense is going to look like moving forward. And Justice Hill is going to rotate in with Gus Edwards, all of that. You don't know what that offense is going to look like. Going to London, not the best matchup. Yeah.
Matt, Chris Lude in the YouTube chat saying, I think what everybody else believing tonight. Matt is a good guest. You are a good guest.
Much love.
Follow to learn more. Follow him on X at PsychWardFF. That's PsychWardFF. And then, of course, the Broto Fantasy Football Podcast, BrotoFantasy.com, and download the Broto Fantasy Football app. Did I miss anything?
No, that's it. You know where to find us right there, Broto Fantasy.
Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Such a pleasure.
I want to thank Matt Water, producer Anthony Rivera. We're back at 7 p.m. Eastern time next week with Roto Ballers, Josh Hayes, hosting for the full 2 hours. Remember, myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Join the weekly challenge right now. You can do that. Choose 10 players or 12 players with or without kickers and defenses. Your choice there. $35 is where the entry fee starts. You can up to $2,500 there. Download the BetterCast app right now in the Google Play Store and the App Store. Play for free. I'm having a blast. Matt Ward's having a blast. We're watching this 3-0 game right now between Kansas City and Denver. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe this is going to be a dogfight tonight. You never know.
Yeah, we might have been.
Yes. The best of the Better Sports Network is up next. We'll talk with you next week. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Much love.